The NFL Combine has officially wrapped up in Indianapolis, and there are some players that stock is rising and some players whose stocks are falling heading into the 2026 NFL season. We are here to break down all the fantasy football impacts, players who you need to be looking out for, and players you might need to be avoiding in your rookie drafts coming up very shortly after the NFL draft. So let's get right into this video here on Blitz Fantasy Football. What's going on, everybody? I'm Blitz Link, and I'm here with Bryce DeGroat. Bryce, great time in the combine this week. Got to watch a ton of players, but let's talk about the players that we think are going, to be rising or falling down draft boards. Why don't you start off with the first player you want to bring up today on your end?
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, bro. We're gonna go right after, and we just gotta talk about Jeremiah Love. Like we can't, like all these other guys, like are debatable, but we can't debate what this guy is doing. Like we all know he's RB1, but we're at the point now that probably best prospect since Bijan Robinson. I think he's a better. I said he was a better prospect than Genti mid college football season, how I viewed him as, but I think it's kind of coming to consensus at this point. And this guy, I know you want him at 9 at the Chiefs. I mean, he seems like he's just rising up, and who knows, someone team might trade in the top 5 for him at this point. But I mean, blazing speed, just looks so good on the field. It's hard to deny how good this guy is.
Dude, I mean, he can do everything, and I think there was a little bit of people that were trying to say Jadarian Price was a more explosive back out of the two, and Love wasn't all that. I mean, Jeremiah Love showed out. Like, there's a lot of prospects that went in the combine and did not test their 40s, did not do some of these drills. Jeremiah Love said, "Screw that! I'm going to do everything, and I'm going to prove why I am such a dominant back." Great 40 time, dominated in positional drills. I mean, he went viral for just doing bag drills with his footwork being so quick. The guy does everything, and the on the field production at his size is unbelievable. Jeremiah Love is a great prospect, and there's even been rumors now that the Titans could be looking at him at 4, despite having basically positional needs every single place of the field. But you had the Titans could be interested in him. I think that would be an interesting fit with Cam Ward under Brian Dable. A lot of running back production there. You look at the Commanders. I know some people have mentioned them at 7. I think more they're just going to plug and play guys. And then it's between the Saints and the Chiefs, the two most likely teams probably to draft in. The Saints, on their end, they don't really have a long-term running back, but they still have Kamara. Kellen Moore played with Saquon. And then the Chiefs, we all know they need a running back. And, me and Bryce were debating on it. We both think that he would be more valued than Christian McCaffrey if he went to Kansas City. So Jeremiah Love is the real deal, and he proved this weekend why he's such a talented running back, and deservingly so. A running back that's rising, though, Mike Washington. I mean, what a stud, Bryce. Talk to me about him a little bit.
Yeah, dude, that's my guy. I posted before the combine how he was like one of like my guys, you could say. I had him as my RB4 before the combine, which was higher than most. I think I saw consensus like RB6, RB7. But this guy, I mean, he's 6'1". He bulldozes dudes over. I always think of the run he had against Texas. Like this guy is a freak of nature when he gets the ball in his hands, and this combine only helped him. I mean, his RAS was off the charts. He had blazing speed. I mean, you saw him. He ran the time. He was crying on the bench of just pure happiness. This guy put on a show. He's super athletic. He's super big. I think he's the most NFL ready with the football in his hands behind Jeremiah Love. I think you get this guy in space. Doesn't offer a ton of receiving upside, but you get this guy in space, man, you got a problem coming at you. And I really am a Mike Washington guy. I'm all in on this, man.
Yeah, Washington is very intriguing. The size is what intrigues me as well. 6'1", 223 pounds, and can run a 4.3. That's really, really good. And I think you can pair him with a receiving back in a backfield. That's super intriguing for me. Honestly, like, we talked about the Saints with Jeremiah Love, that they want to, keep Alvin Kamara. I think Washington would be a great pairing with him and his receiving game, with Washington going on early downs, maybe even a situation in Denver where he's a long-term replacement for J.K. Dobbins alongside R.J. Harvey. I think there are situations where Mike Washington has a big role in year one. And I mean, he proved that he's not necessarily the, 5 to 7th round pick. He's a day 2 pick, I think, going forward. And that's going to be a massive impact on his fantasy football value going forward. And the tight ends, Bryce, Kenyon Sadiq, a player who I was a bit worried about, but he showed out during this combine, and so did Eli Stowers.
You said it best. I mean, Kenyon Sadiq, he's one of those players that I liked but I didn't know if I was on as much as everyone else. Like when people were saying mid first round, I was like, I don't know if I would go that far. But I mean, it's hard to deny how good this guy is. You saw his production in year three at Oregon, and this dude's an athletic freak. He might not be the best blocker. I know people are kind of mixed opinions on the blocking. I view him as can block in special teams, can block in many different ways, but he's pretty inconsistent. Like he's not a down to down blocker. But if you use him in a Travis Kelsey type of role, let him go be a receiving tight end more than anything, you have a legit threat that pretty much can do anything at the tight end position.
Yeah, and I think him, with his size and athleticism developing in the modern day NFL offense, I think he's a perfect fit for the Denver Broncos and what they want to do in their scheme. And if Philly wants to let Dallas Goedert walk, I would not be surprised if that is one of the top options on his free agent market. And then Eli Stowers, maybe a more intriguing pick because he's not necessarily a first round group at the moment. He's a day two pick. There's a lot of tight end needy teams that could be targeting him, after that day one window. Showed really well at Vanderbilt, was their leading receiver on a really good football team, 700 receiving yards this season, tested very well at the combine as well. I think with, the way the position's trending, these modern day NFL tight ends who everybody says can't block, they'll develop into a good enough blocking tight end, or the team will just draft a blocking tight end or sign one to pair with him. We kind of see what Buffalo does. They deploy 3 to 4 tight ends. The receiving ones play on receiving downs, the blocking ones play on early downs, and all of them have different values in fantasy. Dalton Kincaid, still a low end tight end one. I think like Eli Stowers could be that low end tight end one as a rookie just based on his receiving volume alone. Now, we talk about players that are rising. One player that we're kind of split on right now is Carnell Tate for Ohio State. Why are you a little bit lower on Tate heading into, post combine?
I wouldn't say that I'm completely lower. He was just kind of like at first I was like Makai Lemon 1A, Carnell Tate 1B, and then I had Tyson right after. I don't really look at it like that anymore. I kind of look at Lemon being the clear one, Tate being the two, and Jordan Tyson being three. And more, I kind of think it's 2A, 2B with Tate and Tyson. So it's not like I drop them entirely, but I mean, it just all the numbers and all the metrics were just kind of lower than what we expected. And you can't take away how good he is and the production on the field, which I'm not overacting over some arm length or a 40. Like I'm not trying to do all that. It was just one of those that I'm kind of like, ooh, like that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. But I guess I more just look at it as I no more debating Lemon or Tate in my eyes. I look at Lemon as the clear one.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Like Carnell Tate, there's a lot of people that put up numbers. Like each position group had historic runs in 40 yards. Tate ran a 4.5. And while that's not like the worst time you could have as a wide receiver, it kind of reminds me of Tedero McMillan coming out last year. I know McMillan didn't do as much testing, but Tate is not the type of receiver that is going to blow by you, but he's a great route runner. He's a perimeter receiver and he wins contested catches and had that production in college. So I wasn't expecting like a Carnell Tate to go out during the combine and produce crazy numbers and separate himself from Makai Lemon or Jordan Tyson. I just didn't think that was a realistic possibility for him based on his skill set. What he did is just what I expected. I think, with Tate, there's going to be some people that look into it. I hope some NFL teams look into it and say, like, man, like, Carnell Tate, he didn't test great. Maybe he slides in the draft and becomes available for some of these more teams that are set at the quarterback position later in the top 10 or even in that middle of the first round instead of the Browns at 6, which he's been mocked to a lot. And then I think with Makai Lemon, he fits in an offense that needs a slot receiver, right? I think he's going to be a good slot receiver. But with Tate, it's a little bit different. They're two different types of players. And I don't think there's any reason to just panic. I think that's just who Carnell Tate is. He's a perimeter guy. He's not a burner. And I feel like we should pump the brakes on Tate just a little bit. But as far as the other wide receivers go, Bryce Lance, Trey Lance's brother, another North Dakota State wide receiver who had great testing and has some elite size. Talk to me about him a little bit.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I'm gonna be completely honest. I've never watched this guy play. Like I'm not too familiar with his game, but all I know is anyone who was sleeping like me or didn't know about him, you woke up this week because he put on his show at the combine. I mean, he looked so smooth during the drills. He had a blazing 40-yard dash. This guy opened up a lot of eyes. And even if you don't know who he is as a player, like a small school, yeah, he's his brother, but wasn't a premier name, you have now woken up. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have done that, but he's one of the main ones that I look at for me that I'm like, we gotta start digging in some more on this guy.
Yeah, and I back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, 17 touchdowns this past year. He he's had some really good production. I know North Dakota State is not an FBS school, but they produced a lot of NFL talent, and I think Lance is another one of those guys with his size and a 4.3. Like I talk about Carnell Tate being that perimeter receiver. You also like Lance is a burner, right? That has a different type of role, and he's going to be able to take the top off of defenses. I think he's trending more of a late round 2, round 3 pick versus day 3 pick at this point, and that's intriguing for landing in a better spot in my mind. I honestly think like he's the perfect mold for what Buffalo has been trying to fill at their wide receiver position between like Brandon Cooks, Keon Coleman. I think Bryce Lance could be that answer if they decide to avoid wide receiver in round 1. Another guy, Skylar Bell from Connecticut, another smaller school guy, showed out really well. I was impressed with what he did at the combine. He's had really good numbers at school as well. So I thought that was really good for his showing. And then, Jeff Caldwell as well. Talk to me about him, Bryce.
Dude, Jeff Caldwell. So um similar to Bryce Lance. Like I knew about him, but I didn't really know about him, and he's been one of my biggest jumpers. So I first kind of dug in and found out how he really made a name for himself at the Senior Bowl. Kind of kept that in the back of my head, and then here, I mean, 6'5" receiver, and he had the second best RES in wide receiver history. Like, let that speak for itself. I mean, this guy's big. He ran a good speed. He looked good in drills. I think he probably had one of the most underrated combines out of any player, just because he's a little bit of a smaller name. But this dude put on a show, and it's the Senior Bowl, it's the combine. Like, these are the times where you got to make your leap and you got to stand out. And he's doing just that, even if his production in college wasn't like a Carnell Tate or something like that.
Yeah, and the production, like I mean, it just wasn't crazy production in his first year. He transferred from an FCS school into an FBS and didn't have crazy production, but like the talent itself is there. He feels like one of those day 3 flyers that a team develops for one season and then sees, hey, what can we get out of this guy? It feels like an immediate special teams impact player, but best broad jump, one of the best speeds at wide receiver, 6'5". Like that's the exact combo you're looking for there. I think if he puts on weight more too, he could be a consistent perimeter wide receiver in the NFL. But as far as some players, we're a little bit concerned about, Malachi Fields didn't help his stock much. I know he had a really good Senior Bowl, but not great from him at the combine.
Bro, I'm out on him. Like, I was already kind of wishy-washy on him as a prospect, but dude, just sitting there and watching him live, run the 40, do some drills, like, I just don't see it. I mean, this guy was a screen merchant in college. Like, well, I believe 42% of his receptions were like behind the line of scrimmage. Like, he's either behind the line of scrimmage or you're gonna try to throw it up to him. But I've seen how that panned out before. Kind of gives me like Keon Coleman vibes. I'm out on him. Like, I know his 40 time was like a 4.62, and people are like, oh, but he's not a burner. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not easy to just be a go get it receiver in the NFL, especially if you can't get off the line of scrimmage. And those behind the line passes aren't going to work in the NFL level, especially at this speed. So I'm out on him. I was already lower on him than most. I think I had him as like my wide receiver 13, and I had Skylar Bell as my wide receiver 14. I'm easily putting Skylar Bell over him at this point. And even Brendan Thompson, like, I'm gonna consider him over him as well. So if I had to give you an answer, like, my biggest jump from this week was Mike Washington. My biggest fall from this week was Malachi.
Yeah, Malachi did not like. I don't know. Like he showed great at the Senior Bowl, and he was winning a lot of those one-on-one battles. But I also think it's different when an entire defense is out there trying to stop Malachi Fields. Obviously, the route tree speaks for itself in Notre Dame. They weren't necessarily the most pass-happy offense, in college football. But with Malachi, if you're not going to be an elite athlete and you're going to run a majority of underneath routes, like that's not a great combo heading into the NFL. And I think he was a guy that we looked at after the Senior Bowl, was a big riser. Now it's almost like, okay, he's locked in as a day 3 pick. He's not a day 2 type of caliber talent. Another guy that was supposed to be a day 2 caliber talent, Emmett Johnson from Nebraska. How worried are you about him? And is this the next Caleb Johnson?
Dude, this hurts. This does hurt because I didn't ask him a question, but I sat at his interview podium for a little bit, and I love this mentality, especially because he's on the smaller size. Talked about his background. I loved it all, and like I want that guy to succeed, but I mean, it's hard the cards he's going to be dealt with the NFL, especially way slower. What he ran a 4.5, way slower than what I was hoping for. I mean, he looked like he was flying, but it's because he's got little legs and he takes three-inch strides. But I don't know. I just worry about his long-term success, especially with his build, not too fast. He offers receiving upside, which is nice. I think he could play a role there, but as a pure runner in this league, there's definitely some concern.
Yeah, and he had good production at Nebraska. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people were excited about him. He was really good at Nebraska, and he's shown that he could handle a massive workload in college as a three down back. So that's intriguing with him, but the numbers don't impress super well metrically in a running back class where it feels like we don't really know who the second guy is. Like a player like Mike Washington, who has a great showing, has the production, played in the SEC. That's massive, right? You have Emma Johnson, on the other hand, has a bad showing, played in the Big Ten, and I know the Big Ten is still a really good conference, but the SEC is a little bit different on the defensive side of the ball. And then, just didn't show as well at the combine. So with, Emmett, I'm a little bit more skeptical about, does this guy land in a situation where he can be successful in the draft and is, a priority? Because a lot of these day three running backs, they kind of just get stuck in the rotation, don't necessarily get the, opportunities that a day two, a day one guy will get in their rookie season. And that makes me concerned for his immediate impact in fantasy football to open up this year. All in all, though,
I,
Bryce, I think, or what were we going to say?
I was gonna say, I know you brought up Caleb Johnson, like could have that type of impact, but I will say my favorite comp for him though is like a Jalen Warren because Jalen Warren doesn't run the football that well. They just use him in a lot of different ways, and I think if they can get him in that type of situation, we could be talking. But obviously that's rare, and you kind of need the cards to fall right.
And I'll say this before we close this video, like RAS scores, combine metrics, they are telling, but it is not the end all be all. I mean, think about Puka Nakua and, the showing that he had in the combine, how late he went in the draft and how dominant he was right away in fantasy. This is not the end all be all. It is just a way for us to help predict performances, landing situations, and how these guys might perform against NFL competition. That is all we're doing here. If you enjoyed a prospect or think somebody is going to struggle, drop a comment down below who that is. Hit that subscribe button for more Blitz fantasy football content. And me and Bryce will catch you all next time.